Boston College signs 27 recruits for the class of 25. They're low on stars, but high on talent.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day, and I'm your host, AJ Black. Thank you for making me your go-to Boston College podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase. Well, it's one of the best times of the season. It's National Signing Day. We had 27 Boston College recruits commit to the Eagles, plus one little special surprise afterwards. I'm going to explain who that is. I'll tell you why I'm excited about this class and why 247, who I work for, their star rating may not accurately show why you should be excited about this upcoming class. We're going to also look at the locals. I think there's a lot of excitement about some of the kids they brought in. I'll explain why the Massachusetts kids are a reason for you to get excited about the class of 2025. And finally, Donovan Ezeiruaku, ACC Player of the Year defensively. Cool moment. I'll explain what happened and why Donovan should be being looked at for some of the bigger awards around the country. We'll get into all that on today's show. Jam-packed here at Locked On Boston College. Now, class of 2025 for Boston College had 27 commitments. No real big surprises other than the addition of 25 defensive tackle London Seymour out of North Gwinnett, Georgia. He's a 6'5", 305-pound defensive tackle, the third in their class, that committed to Boston College over offers from Arkansas State, Coastal Carolina, Colorado, Dion's Colorado, and a few other G5 schools. This was not a huge surprise. I had known about it. They wanted to keep this one a little bit quiet because I think they really wanted to make sure they landed him. And he committed after National Signing Day press conference that Bill O'Brien had around 2:00 today. Why should you be excited about him? Well, you might know his dad. His dad is former Patriots great, University of Georgia star Richard Seymour, and that's another great connection. Anytime you can have an NFL legend, a Hall of Famer connected to your program, whether it's it's part of his lineage, that's a great thing. It helps boost the profile of your school. So obviously this is good. I know that the staff is very excited about this kid. So this is a good get for Boston College. You might say it's a flyer. I don't see it that way. Now, the class itself ranks in the 50s. And you may say to yourself, AJ, that's worse than what Hafley did. And if you looked at the first class that Jeff Hafley had in this class, it's about 20. It's a 20 spot difference, which I could get why you'd be a little bit hesitant. But for me, when you're looking at Boston College recruiting, it's not just you want to get your star guys at points. And, right now they're going after Kai Pritchard, a 4-star offensive lineman for the class of 26. You want to get those guys. You definitely do. But with hindsight now, the class that Jeff Hafley had in 2021, which was ranked, I think, 34th in the country, you look at who they had for stars, like the top, you look at their top 10 rankings, who was in their top 10. And and I don't want to just pick out kids, but it's, guys that never even made it on the team. Like you had CJ Burton, who transferred after a year, Bug Jones, who hasn't really played, Jalen Cheek, who's transferring, Jalen Williams, depth guy, Sean Gates never made it. And then a couple other guys. So the top 10 of that class was not really successful. Like it wasn't like anything like you didn't get your Donovan Ezeiruaku. Now you look deeper and it's okay. But that's where I'm getting at here, folks. This Boston College recruiting, it's nuts and bolts all the time, is based on evaluation. How does the staff evaluate and get guys that are going to fit into this program? Because if you look back to what BC did this year, one of the biggest success stories under Bill O'Brien has been his ability to develop players. From taking a guy like Omar Thornton, who most of you probably didn't even know about, and heck, I didn't even consider as a factor going into the season. How'd you get from him being a true freshman to him being a valuable starter by the end of the year? Ashton McShane, same thing. You look on the offensive side of the ball, Turbo Richard, Jordan McDonald. You go down the list, you can find guys that started the season off here and their game elevated because of good coaching and developing. So you ask yourself, when you see rankings like this, how much of a difference is there going to be between 40 and 55? Probably not a lot. But do you trust Bill O'Brien and his staff to evaluate players? If you don't, then you may be worried about this class. If you're saying to yourself, I don't know, man, I don't know if he can evaluate players, and I don't know where you would get that from, but maybe there's something I'm missing, and that's your decision, and you can think that, right? That you're thinking to yourself, he needs to get those elite players and 4 stars because that's what good teams do. Then you may be worried about this class. If you're like where I'm at, I've seen enough in this year to know that I believe that he and his staff have enough experience. Tim Lewis has been around forever. Will Long, whether you liked him or not at the beginning of the year, by the end of the year, he knew how to maximize some of these players. And a lot of these positional players, they have years and years of experience. This is a group that is not Jeff Hafley, a guy who, was a positional coach, got thrown into a spot where maybe it was a little bit more than he could chew. This is a group that has that, experience and depth to know what they're looking at. They I believe will be able to find these guys. I look at a guy like Omarion Davis, whom again you look, he's ranked like an 88, which is one of the higher guys. But you look at him. Look what he did his senior year. He was a nomination for the Bronco Nagurski Award. He was a guy that, you look at his stat sheets, is loaded with big plays, but he didn't have a ton of big offers. Does that matter? Or do you trust what Bill O'Brien does to evaluate and his staff? I think I would trust him. You look at Zachary Thomas. He had more big offers. But again, you watch his film, as Bill O'Brien said in his videos, which, side note, those videos that they did on Twitter for each player, chef's kiss. Those were great. That was such a great way to personalize every single commitment. And honestly, it was really cool. I mean, I learned stuff based on what he thought on each player. It was just a cool little thing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to BC Football. They did a personalized Bill O'Brien reaction to each player about why they liked him. Very cool moment. And I think that's, again, a part of putting together this package of recruiting. But again, you go to Zachary Thomas, linebacker from Georgia. He had some offers. He had UNC. He had some other schools looking at him, Georgia Tech. There was interest. Did you get guys that had major like, Bama interest? No. But what guys, honestly, how many guys do you usually get that have that kind of offer list? You had CJ Burton a couple years ago. I guess you could say Drew Kendall. I mean, the list is very short. Like most times, if a powerhouse school wants a BC recruit, they're going to take him. It's just the way life is. And most guys that you're getting are not the guys. They're the guys that you need to coach up. So what I'm saying here is, and this is crazy coming from a guy who works for 247, maybe don't rely so heavily on the stars right now. Because I think this class specifically, they were, as he said, starting behind the 8 ball because they had to, recruiting's all about relationships and they had 8 months to do it. That next year you might be able to see BC go after some of those bigger 4-star recruits. Guys like Laniel Hall, Marky Walbridge might be a 4-star. I mentioned Kai Pritchard. There's going to be chances. They have more time to work on it. We'll have to see where that goes. But for now, I look at the kids that they got. I've watched a lot of their film, and I think that they're onto something with with who they landed. And for Boston College, a school that's not going to bring in a top 20 class, as much as you want to hate it, the guys that they brought in, whether it's Shaker Reisig or some of these wide receivers like Samaj Fleming or Ned Bolden, there's a lot of talent there. I think they got a lot of talent. So I'm excited about this class. And I also want to talk a little bit about the Massachusetts recruits. In a moment, there's 5 of them. And I'll tell you why I'm pretty excited about who they brought in. We'll get into all that in just a moment. This is Locked On Boston College, and I want to tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. I'm a big fan of some of the parlays that you can do. If you're watching a game with the Baltimore Ravens in it, you can find Zay Flowers, his yardage that he's going to get, whether he's going to be an anytime touchdown player or these over under on the Ravens. Add them all together, give yourself a nice little parlay, and see how you do. You can do that during the game. You could do it before the game. Can't do it after the game. That'd be crazy. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here, and I want to thank all of my Eagle Nest subtexters. They are part of our subtext program, which is a text-based program where I give out videos, I give out text, and I'm going to give them one soon on the recruiting class that I think they're going to enjoy. And you guys can ask me all sorts of questions on it. If you want to try it out, it's free for the first month. Just get the code down below and type in the code Bill O'Brien Monster, and you can be part of it as well. I think you'll enjoy it. Try it out today. Now, let's talk about local recruits. Obviously, Bill O'Brien, one of the things he said when he took over this job was that he wanted to recruit hard in the state of Massachusetts. Now, I've heard differing meanings of what that means, because I think the staff understands that Massachusetts and the New England area, you can't build your whole recruiting class around that group, because the talent in Massachusetts, you're going to get some really good, hardworking kids in this area, kids that you're going to want to play. But also, if you just went New England, your team is going to get killed because you gotta move around the country, and that's why they had recruits from Texas, they had recruits from Georgia, Florida, some of the football-rich areas. But Bill O'Brien said on Wednesday, he said, we want to get the guys that we want to get in the state. And I think BC did a really good job there. Now, there certainly were guys that went elsewhere that I thought Boston College definitely wanted to try to get, like Hardy Watts, a offensive lineman who ended up in Wisconsin. And there were a couple Duke defensive ends that I thought they were going to, Tommy Rupley, I thought they might have a chance at those two guys. You can't get them all. But they did get some guys from Massachusetts that I liked. And to top it off, he talked about the 2 running backs today. These 2 running backs are 2 players I think you could see early, and I think should get you excited about the future of the running game in Boston College. That's Mekhi Dodd and Bo McCormick. Bo McCormick has video game numbers in the state of Massachusetts. He ran for 7,000 yards during his time in high school at BB&N. 7,000. Then, on top of adding Bo McCormick, you add in Mekhi Dodd from Catholic Memorial, who led the state in rushing this year after hurting his knee as a junior. This is a great 1-2 punch. First of all, you got to love that Bo McCormick you took from Syracuse. That's always fun. And then Mekhi Dodd, who plays for CM, comes from that pipeline that has seemingly enriched Boston College with a lot of players, including Jaden Skeet and, Day Jones and the Tucker brothers. I mean, there's been a lot of guys. Owen McGowan. I'm going to miss a few. And if you're a parent, I apologize. I tried my best. But there's a lot of guys that come from CM, right? And that's great. So you get these 2 guys. You add them into a running back room that next year is going to have Turbo Richard, Day Jones, as I mentioned, Alex Brum, who should be coming back from a knee injury, and Jordan McDonald, and all of a sudden the loss of Kai Robichaux and Trayshawn Ward to graduation, it doesn't hurt as much because you're bringing in some talent and you're going to have a really good running back room. And so I love that they have these local kids. I think those, that's going to be a fun part of this offense is that you have two running backs now, three, excuse me, with Jones that are all local. And so that's an important addition. You also added Kalen Jasinski, who I believe is going to be a wide receiver, tight end kind of hybrid. He plays for St. Sebastian's, the son of Rob Jasinski, who is an offensive analyst for Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien said he watched him play and was blown away at how talented this kid is. He's more under the radar. I got to say that right off the bat, right? He's more under the radar. He didn't have a ton of offers, but if he's a guy that they feel like they can coach up, all the power to them. And anytime that you can get a recruit, and maybe it's not like your top tier type of recruit, but from a Massachusetts school, it builds relationships. And St. Sebastian, they've had a history with BC. That's where Connor Strahan played at. And just getting more and more guys here, that just helps. It just helps. And it doesn't hurt that he's related to somebody on the staff. Additionally, Griffin Collins, who I believe is going to be an early enrollee. I don't have it right in front of me. I think I remember him telling me that. A 6'4", like typical tight end. I mean, typical linebacker. He had a big season for Worcester Academy, another school that I don't have it in front of me, but I wonder how. I don't think I've heard anyone from BC going from there, but I'm sure there is. But you add him in, and then Micah Amadi, Micah Amadi. I know I messed his name up. I heard Bill say it today. Amadi. Sometimes when you finally hear the staff say it, you go, "Oh boy, I've been saying it wrong the entire time." Well, Amadi came from Ezeiruaku brothers. He's been the biggest cheerleader of this class. Obviously, Ezeiruaku brothers is a great school to get a recruit from. Amadi, he's a bowling ball. I talked about having London Seymour here. You bring in Amadi, and then you also have Sterling Sanders, who's another big defensive tackle. If you again trust what Bill O'Brien does in terms of developing and building players, these guys have the frame and motor that are going to be exciting. The motor, I think, is the biggest asset. It sounds like for all three defensive tackles, and that's exciting. Like having guys at the middle that are big and fast and have a big motor, that's always a plus, right? So you add all these, local recruits. You bring in guys that are going to probably be impactful, and that's great. You didn't win every battle, but you brought in 5. That's good. Next year, I think they're already at 4 for local recruits. You have 3 offensive linemen, and there's another one I'm totally blanking on right now. But you're still going after, as I mentioned, U-Haul and Marky Wallbridge. You're going to build you're going to have each year a core group of local recruits that you're going to want to go after. Those are the ones that you're going to really try to get. And I'm not sure they're going to get both Wallbridge and U-Haul. If I was going to guess, I would say Wallbridge is a bigger possibility. But you've already landed a bunch of local kids. This is where you can start to build. And I think getting 5 recruits each class from the Massachusetts area, if there's the talent there, if there's not, you go lower. I think next year will be another talent-rich class in the state of Massachusetts, and I think that'll be important to look at. Now, in our final segment, we're going to move away from National Signing Day. We're going to get into one of the biggest years Boston College has had from a single person in recent memory. I'm going to talk about Donovan Ezeiruaku. His enormous year ends with some great hardware already. I'll tell you about how he found out about it and why this was a really cool moment for Boston College. We'll get into all that in just a moment. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here. If you like my podcast, go check out Locked On ACC with Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono. You can find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Now, on Wednesday, in all this hubbub of you had London Seymour commit, you had 27 signees, you had the Bill O'Brien press conference. There was just so much stuff going on. You also had the biggest moment, I think the biggest moment of the day, where Donovan Ezeiruaku was named ACC Defensive Player of the Year. And honestly, I wasn't 100% sure he was going to get named. Boston College gets a lot of crap. And when you saw that Antoine Paul Rylan was like a half a sack behind, I thought that maybe they would be a little bit more biased towards Virginia Tech. And I'm sure Virginia Tech fans are all upset because Donovan Ezeiruaku got it. But stats, they dictated it, that Ezeiruaku deserved it. Now, how did he find out? Well, this again was a masterclass day of Boston College PR, because I thought their graphics and video team all day long did an amazing job of capturing some really cool moments. Whether, as I said before, it was the Bill O'Brien profile of every recruit that stood out compared to other schools. Other schools, they did the photoshops and they just, and when you have 27 of them, they all kind of blur together. These were unique. They were special. They were filled with highlights from Huddle. They were cool moments. That was cool. But those weren't even as cool as what they did for Ezeiruaku. Shortly after he was named Defensive Player of the Year, they announced a video and how they announced it to him, which was they sat Ezeiruaku in the Flynn room. That's where the media goes after the football games. You probably have seen it from the other angle when Bill's sitting there, if you ever watched the videos. But they flipped it so you could see actually where the people sit. That's also where they announce all the new coaches and stuff like that. And they were talking to him and they fooled him into thinking that he was going to be thanking the fans for a special season. So he does it, and it's funny because he messes up in it, and he goes, cut that. But they keep going, and then they're like, oh, we have something for you. And they hand him an iPad. And on the iPad's his mom. And his mom's talking to him on Zoom. And she's got a great background. It's her wearing a jersey. I think it must have been someone in her family with like an old school. I want to say maybe it's high school jersey, but it had Ezeiruaku on the back. It was gray and yellow. I couldn't tell what it was. And she's talking to him, and she's telling him about how special he is and how blah blah blah. And then she just like switches it, and she goes, and additionally, I need to tell you, the ACC coaches had a vote, and they named you Defensive Player of the Year. A lot of dust in the air on that one. That was a really cool moment. I was like, wow, if I was Donovan, that would have been amazing. I mean, it was just a cool moment. Then on top of all that, after she tells him, and he's got this huge grin on his face, just such a cool moment. His team comes flying, or I think it was all the defensive tackles or defensive linemen come flying in. You can see Josiah Griffin, you can see Netaway Paula. They're all giving him bear hugs and slapping him, giving him daps. Bill O'Brien's there. He gives them a big dap too. It was just such a cool moment. And the way that they captured it and did it, it's again memorable. Everyone's gonna remember the story. Like just like with Zay, remember Zay like 2 years ago with his "I'm coming back" video? This was like the same thing. Except I think even more powerful. It made a very cool moment even better. Now, again, this was the capstone of what was one of the most special Boston College seasons in recent memory. You could put it up there with AJ Dillon, Luke Kuechly, and maybe Matt Ryan. Like in terms of dominating single season performances by an individual. Like he led the league in stats. I go back to my preseason thoughts for him, and all I was hoping for was he would be able to get some sacks, like because the BC just had none. He went from that just thought that maybe he'd get like 7 or 6 sacks to 16 and a half, led the country, and was one of the most dominant forces on defense anywhere. That is a testament to the staff, and it's a testament to Donovan for an incredible year. It was one of those years that like we'll be looking back and we'll talk about Bill O'Brien and his big year, but it almost reminds me to an extent of 2013 when Steve Addazio took over. If I tell you, if you were around and you weren't like tiny at that point, you remember the year before BC was putrid. I think they were 2-10. He comes in, and you'll remember 2 things. First of all, that they ended up being bowl eligible. I think they were 7-5 that year, or 6-6. But it was Andre Williams' year, right? This year, you're going to remember the same thing. BC finishes 7-5, and it was Donovan Ezeiruaku that led to a lot of that. So how many big performances he had, whether it was just absolutely wrecking Pitt in that last game, wrecking UNC. Like, he had 3 ACC Defensive Lineman of the Year week awards. He deserves national recognition. I don't know if he's going to get it or not, but I want to stump for him on my small platform. Folks, if you are out there and you're like, should I vote for Donovan Ezeiruaku for, Defensive Lineman of the Year? Yes, he deserves it. Get it for him. He's going to be someone we're going to be talking about in the NFL in a couple of years. And whatever team's going to get him is going to be lucky, because if they can use him in the right way, the way that Tim Lewis used him, he could be a force in the NFL. Great moment. Congratulations to Donovan Ezeiruaku. I hope you guys if you haven't checked it out, go check it. Now, on tomorrow's show, we're going to wrap the week up. We're going to talk more about any transfer portal. It was a quiet day today, so that was nice, especially with all the recruiting stuff. I didn't get thankfully that didn't happen. But maybe I'm starting to see teams leaking out that they're having visitors. And remember, underclassmen can't be contacted by other schools until December 9th, but grad students can. So if the kid is graduated, which is, I think, what happened with Thomas Castellanos, I saw he was already saying that he's gotten contacted. If he's been graduated already, he can be contacted by anybody. Graduate students can be in the portal already. It's the underclassmen. So maybe we'll start to hear some names, because Bill has said before he wants older kids. So maybe we'll hear about that. And if there's news on it, you know where to trust, and you know who's going to talk about it. It's going to be me, AJ Black. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247 and check me out at Eagle Insider. Thank you all for making Locked On Boston College your first listen every day. And we'll be back again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.